In Revenge of the Sith, Anakin Skywalker falls, the Jedi Order burns, and Darth Vader becomes the Emperor's chained weapon. But what if the Emperor didn't get to keep him? What if, on the night Vader was born, something older than Palpatine woke up beneath Coruscant and claimed him first? In this version of the story, Darth Nihilus doesn't return as a man, and Vader becomes his student instead. Let's begin. The medical theater on Coruscant is cold and bright. Restraints bite into what's left of muscle. Droids hum like insects. The first breath through the mask sounds like a knife dragged across metal, and the sound doesn't soften. It becomes the rhythm of his existence. The man who was Anakin Skywalker lies inside armor that now decides whether he gets air. "Padmé is dead," Darth Sidious says, and he says it like he's sealing the last door. "In your anger, you killed her." Mustafar flashes behind Vader's eyes in broken frames. Lava light, heat, a metal ramp. Obi-Wan's voice. Padmé's face. Something in him tries to surge upward, and the suit holds him down. Rage fills the space where a life used to be. Sidious leans in, satisfied. "In time, I will teach you control." Control lands like a collar. Vader doesn't hear guidance. He hears ownership. Then the lights overhead flicker, not from the facility, from the Force. Sidious stills. His smile thins as he senses it, something deep beneath the polished city, beneath the temple district, in the strata Coruscant, never admits exist. Sidious has spent years shaping that buried darkness into a private instrument. Tonight, he brought a final piece into the room to finish the binding. A sealed container in a side alcove. A relic meant to make the suit obey. The pressure rises anyway. The air thickens, not with fear, but with absence, like the room is losing something essential that machines can't measure. The container trembles. Vader can't turn his head. He only feels the pull, sharp and hungry, hooked into his pain. Sidious turns, irritated. "Show yourself!" The latch releases without a hand touching it. A mask lifts into the air as if gravity is optional. Pale, hollow, ancient. It doesn't glow, it drains the light around it until the corners of the room look wrong. Sidious's confidence falters, not because he doubts his power, but because this isn't a rival trying to take his throne. This is something that doesn't want the throne at all. The mask tilts toward Vader, and Vader feels it. Not a whisper, not a temptation, a grip. A hook that finds his agony and uses it like a handle. Sidious strikes first. Lightning lashes from his hands, violent and absolute, meant to pin anything living and burn it into obedience. The lightning hits the mask and disappears. Not deflected, not absorbed like a shield. Eaten. The drain tugs back along the current and brushes Sidious himself, close enough that his eyes widen in the smallest, ugliest fraction of surprise. Vader's restraints snap. The table fractures. Metal bends. Droids scatter like insects fleeing heat. Sidious whips toward him, furious, ready to punish movement, ready to reassert the chain. But Vader isn't looking at Sidious. He's staring at the mask as if it's staring through him. A voice arrives through the Force, not from lungs, not from a throat, like the galaxy remembering an old nightmare. "Take him." Vader's hand rises. The Force clamps around Sidious's throat. Sidious hardens into rage and tries to unleash lightning again, but the current sputters. The mask drinks without effort, and the room feels thinner by the second. Vader pulls. Sidious chokes, and instinct flips to manipulation. "Anakin," he manages, offering the name like a leash he's used 1,000 times. The boy who needed it isn't there. The armor leans forward like a predator. "You lied," Vader says. Sidious reaches for his lightsaber, and the hilt folds in midair under Vader's grip, crushed like cheap metal. The crack is small. In the silence, it lands like a verdict. Sidious tries to speak again. Pride fights to stay upright. Vader tightens his hand. Sidious drops. No speech, no ceremony, just the galaxy's most careful monster dying on a cold floor. For a heartbeat, Vader expects relief. Instead, the dark side yawns open into something colder than Mustafar. He sways. His breathing stutters. The suit compensates, hissing, forcing air into him like it's keeping a body alive out of stubbornness. The mask drifts closer. "You are broken," the voice says. Vader's hand shakes as he reaches for his saber. Good. It isn't comfort. It's approval the way fire approves of dry wood. The doors blast open. Red-robed royal guards rush in, electrostaves rising, trained to die for an emperor who is now a corpse. Vader doesn't move fast enough to fight. He doesn't need to. The mask tilts. The guards freeze mid-step, as if their bodies forget the next command. Their mouths open to shout. Nothing comes. They crumple, drained before they hit the floor. Vader stares at them, and something in him recoils, not out of mercy, but out of recognition. This isn't cruelty. This is feeding. You feel it, the voice says. And it's true. The pain in Vader's burned nerves eases, just slightly, as if suffering has been turned into currency. He hates that it works. Pain is a door, the voice tells him. Hunger is the key. By dawn, Coruscant looks unchanged from above. Traffic flows, towers shine. The Senate district glitters like it always has. Underneath, something settles into the roots of the planet city, in the hidden chamber beneath the temple where Sidious built his private shrine. Nihilus doesn't claim the throne room. He claims the foundation, and Vader follows, because there is nowhere else left to stand. The next day, the holofeed interrupts across the capital. Not from the Senate chamber, from a dark corridor beneath the temple district, ancient stone cut with old carvings, a place that feels wrong to look at for too long. A figure in black stands before the camera. Vader's voice is new and brutal. Citizens of the Empire, Emperor Palpatine is dead? He lets that hang long enough to spread through every room listening. The Jedi attempted to seize power. They failed. The survivors will be hunted to the last. He doesn't crown himself. He doesn't promise his ability. He declares the hunt, the feed cuts. Across the galaxy, people understand without being told. The leash is gone, and the thing that wore it is still walking. Light years away, a ship leaves Polis Massa under a sky that feels too quiet. Bail Organa watches the feed with his face drained. Obi-Wan stands beside him, rigid with grief he can't afford to show. Yoda listens with eyes closed, ears dipping like a funeral bell. Another shadow there is, Yoda murmurs. Obi-Wan nods once, sharp and sick. He felt it too, something layered over Vader, colder than hate. He's not alone. Plans change fast. Leia goes to Alderaan with Bail. Luke disappears to Tatooine, hidden where no one will think to look for a child with Skywalker blood. The surviving Jedi scatter, not to surrender, but to live long enough to understand what just woke up. On Coruscant, Masa Meda and the bureaucrats arrive the way they always do. Files, procedures, emergency continuity protocols, assuming they can guide the next regime the way they guided the last. They are met by a corridor lined with drained bodies. Vader stands at the end of it, unmoving, helmet reflecting cold light. Masa Meda tries to speak. His throat locks. It isn't a choke. It's the sudden certainty that his life is a switch someone else controls. Speak quickly, Vader says. Masa Meda forces air out. The Senate will obey. That becomes policy. Not persuasion, not debate. Obedience, enforced by dread no one can negotiate with. The Empire shifts. It stops pretending it's a government. It becomes a feeding ground with uniforms. And the next lesson happens where nobody files reports. A detention level beneath a military medical wing. A man is dragged in, accused of leaking supply routes to Outer Rim holdouts. He's shaking, thinking he'll be interrogated, thinking words still matter. Vader enters alone. The prisoner pleads, bargains, promises, confesses to crimes he didn't commit just to stop the silence. Vader places a gloved hand on his chest. The man's fear spikes so hard it almost becomes a scream. Then it becomes nothing. He collapses. Vader's breathing steadies. The ache behind the armor dulls, briefly, cleanly, like reward. He hates the relief. He wants it again. Again, the voice says. Training under Sidious would have been politics, tests, punishments, endless chess. Training under Nihilus is simpler and worse. Feed until it feels like instinct. Vader learns to drain without contact. He learns to reach into a crowd and pull on the richest panic first. He learns that life can be drawn through distance like a thread. And he learns what Sidious would never have let him touch, If you can take, you can patch. Not whole, not kind, but enough that the suit stops being only survival. It becomes a theater, a signal the galaxy can't stop looking at. Because fear is easier to harvest when you can hear it coming. That difference matters the moment Tarkin arrives. Tarkin doesn't come to kneel. He comes to propose structure, the superweapon program, centralized doctrine, a visible fear that ends rebellion before it starts. He believes in systems the way Sith believe in power. He stands straight in Vader's presence, refusing to show the discomfort the room creates. Lord Vader, the Empire requires decisive force, a single weapon that ends dissent before it spreads. Vader listens. Something ancient behind the mask listens too. You don't burn your food. Tarkin's expression barely shifts, but the meaning hits hard. This Empire isn't thinking in terms of control. It's thinking in terms of consumption. He tries once more, careful. Fear is most effective when it is visible. Vader steps closer, voice low. Fear is most useful when it can be eaten. Tarkin leaves with his mind racing, understanding a terrifying math. If this continues, the Empire doesn't just crush its enemies. It hollows itself out. Worlds go quiet because there's nobody left to rule. So he begins building his answer in the shadows, reassignments, loyal officers, secured shipyards, quiet infrastructure, constructing a spine that doesn't rely on one monster. Out in the dark, the Jedi feel the shift like weather turning. Obi-Wan on Tatooine can't see Coruscant, but he feels a pull in the Force that isn't anger. It's emptier than that, like a vacuum leaning on reality. Yoda feels it too and says nothing, because some threats shrink when named, and this one doesn't. The rebellion begins early, not as a banner but as a reflex. People don't become brave because they're inspired. They become brave because the alternative is being erased. On a mid-rim world that refuses tribute, a crowd gathers in a plaza believing numbers can protect them. A shuttle lands. Vader steps out. He doesn't ignite his saber. He doesn't make a speech. He raises one hand. The front row drops first, not bleeding, not choking, just collapsing as if the light inside them shut off. The plaza goes silent. Vader turns back to the shuttle and the message lands without words. This isn't punishment, it's feeding. Obi-Wan finally breaks his own rule and reaches out through the Force, searching for a thread of Anakin inside the armor. He finds it, faint, furious, still alive. Something coils around it. Anakin, Obi-Wan whispers. The answer isn't language, it's hunger pushing back. Obi-Wan jerks away, shaken, because for a second he understands the mechanism. Pain reduced only by someone else's suffering. Yoda's voice arrives in his mind like a stone dropped into water. Cut the mask! We must. They don't know the name of what's there. They don't need it. They know there's an anchor, and a man being used as the doorway. They plan to return to Coruscant not to win a war, but to remove the wound before it eats the city from underneath. Time passes in hiding. The Empire hardens, the hunt spreads. Then Bael's underground lanes reach a shadow that answers without ceremony. A former Jedi Padawan who moves like someone who learned survival the hard way. Ahsoka Tano leads the approach through Coruscant's lower levels, where the city's light dies and Old Stone remembers prayers it shouldn't. A small team slips into depths the Republic spent 1,000 years pretending were myth. They find the shrine, not a throne room, a conduit, black glass, carved stone, an architecture built to make darkness louder. In the center, the mask floats above a cracked altar. Vader stands beneath it like a knight under a cursed crown. His helmet turns as they enter, and the air tightens. You came. Obi-Wan steps forward, and it hurts to see the armor because he remembers the boy who used to smile too easily. Anakin, this isn't you. Vader's hand lifts. You don't get to say my name. The Force surges. Stone tears from the walls. Ahsoka ignites her blades, pale light cutting the black. The mask tilts. The light doesn't dim like a lamp. It dims like hope being pulled underwater. So much light, the voice murmurs. Ahsoka's breath catches. She's fought a Sith. This is something else entirely, like drowning on dry land. Obi-Wan ignites his saber anyway because he isn't here to be safe. He's here to buy seconds. Blue meets red. The duel is brutal immediately because Vader isn't fighting like a disciplined apprentice. He's fighting like a starving thing that learned how to swing a blade. Obi-Wan parries and redirects, trying to find the rhythm they once shared, trying to reach something human through motion. Vader answers with pressure that makes the floor crack. Ahsoka circles wide, eyes locked on the altar. Vader is the blade, the mask is the engine. She moves in, and a wave of force power slams her into a pillar. Her vision flashes. Her blades skid across stone. Vader doesn't even look at her. He's locked on Obi-Wan. "You left me." Obi-Wan grits through it. "I tried to save you." The mask swells in the space between them, tasting the emotion, thickening the air. "Break him," the voice says. Vader drives Obi-Wan backward toward the altar, each strike heavier. Obi-Wan knows he can't win a long fight, so he changes the target. He stops trying to defeat Vader. He tries to remind him, "Padmé loved you." The red blade pauses, just a fraction, but in a place like this, a fraction is a crack. Vader's helmet tilts, and the air trembles as if the word hit something sealed behind metal. The pressure surges again. "She is gone," Vader snarls, and the saber comes back down like he's trying to cut the memory out of the room. Obi-Wan holds the line and leans in, voice steady. "And you are still here." That lands, because it's true, and Vader knows it. Ahsoka sees the opening, not in Vader's guard but in the mask's attention. The hunger is focused on Obi-Wan's grief. So she goes for the anchor. A chain hangs from the altar's edge, a containment tether, a failsafe built into the shrine. Ahsoka grabs it and yanks. The tether snaps taut. The mask jerks in midair for the first time. The chamber shudders. Vader whips toward her. "No." He reaches out, and Obi-Wan steps into the line and takes the shove, skidding across stone, buying Ahsoka one more second. Ahsoka hauls the mask toward a socket in the altar, a cradle meant to lock Sith artifacts in place. The mask fights like an animal. The air screams. "Mine," the voice presses. Vader lunges. Obi-Wan intercepts, blades colliding. Vader's saber bites into Obi-Wan's shoulder guard. Obi-Wan staggers but stays upright long enough to meet Vader at arm's length. "Anakin, choose." Choose is poison to Vader. It means responsibility. It means ownership of what he's become. But in the clash, he feels the truth no one can talk him out of. The mask isn't making him free. It's teaching him how to feed. And eventually, it will feed on him too. Vader's hand opens, not toward Obi-Wan, not toward Ahsoka, toward the altar. He tears the containment cradle out of its housing with brute force, ripping old conduits, making the shrine scream. Ahsoka looks up, stunned, as Vader turns the cradle like a weapon. He drives it into the mask. For the first time, Nihilus makes a sound that feels like pain. The mask locks into the cradle. The cage flares, Sith engineering and stolen power trying to hold a hunger that was never meant to be held. Vader staggers. Suit alarms blare. The drain reverses, not completely, but enough for Vader to feel what he has been doing. Agony, emptiness, being turned into fuel. He drops to one knee. Obi-Wan watches, horrified, because this isn't surrender. It's resistance. Vader's voice drops, and for a second it sounds like Anakin again. "Get out." Ahsoka hesitates. Obi-Wan doesn't. He grabs her arm and pulls her back because he understands what Vader is about to do. They run, as the shrine shakes apart, stone splitting, floor fracturing. While behind them, Vader stands, shaking, holding the cage in both hands like it weighs the galaxy. Nihilus thrashes inside it, clawing at reality. Vader steps into the shrine's center, toward the amplification node, the heart of the structure that makes darkness louder. He knows what it will do. He does it anyway. "You will not take her," Vader says. "You will not take them." He slams the cage into the node. For a beat, the world holds its breath. Then the shrine collapses inward, not as an explosion, but as a closing throat. Darkness folds into itself, swallowing its own echo. The sound that follows isn't thunder. It's a silence so heavy it feels like the city above should sink into it. Ahsoka and Obi-Wan burst into a maintenance tunnel as the shock rolls through the lower levels. Lights die in strips. Pipes rupture. Far above, Coruscant's skyline flickers as grids choke and reroute. Hours later, they stagger into open air, bruised and breathing hard. The Force feels different. Not perfect, but no longer pressed thin by a mouth at the edge of the world. Obi-Wan turns his face toward the distant glow of the temple spires, and something in him breaks quietly. Is he can't finish. Then he nods once. He ended it. The Empire doesn't collapse instantly, but it changes fast. With Sidious gone, power fractures. Governors argue. Admirals hesitate. The Senate senses weakness and begins to remember it has teeth. Tarkin moves quickly, because he always does, trying to stitch doctrine back into a government. But the galaxy has already tasted a different kind of terror, one that doesn't negotiate, doesn't punish, doesn't even hate. It erases, and scars like that don't vanish when the monster is gone. On Alderaan, Bail holds Leia tighter, staring out at peaceful mountains that suddenly feel breakable. On Tatooine, Obi-Wan watches Luke run through sand and realizes the boy's future has shifted again. On Dagobah, Yoda sits in silence and lets the swamp breathe. Ahsoka disappears back into the lanes, not with speeches, but with work, helping worlds rebuild, pulling survivors towards safe places, cutting down threats before they can grow into new empires. And under Coruscant, where a shrine once turned darkness into a pipeline, there is only ruin. What if Darth Nihilus trained Darth Vader? In this timeline, the training is short, brutal, and nearly catastrophic. Vader learns how to feed, and in learning it, he finally understands what he is becoming. Not a ruler, not a savior, but a doorway. And at the last moment, he chooses to close it, even if it burns away what's left of him.